Welcome to the Special Forces in World War II podcast, transmitting on this frequency. This broadcast is your dedicated channel for comprehensive intelligence regarding World War II Special Forces operations. Our transmissions encompass in-depth analysis of their strategic maneuvers, cutting-edge equipment, illustrious biographies, and an array of pertinent subjects. The orchestration of these transmissions is executed by the expert team of the Special Forces in World War II website, a squad deeply immersed in the historical theatre. For further insights, visual aids, and captured moments frozen in time, navigate to our virtual headquarters at worldwar2-soft.com. Your immersion into the front lines of knowledge awaits. Over and out. Welcome to a new episode of the Special Forces in World War II podcast. Today, we continue our journey through Operation Frankton with Episode 3, the Escape Phase. In our previous episodes, we explored the meticulous planning and daring assault carried out by the Royal Marine Boom Patrol Detachment on Bordeaux harbour. In Episode 1, we covered the meticulous planning phase of Operation Frankton. Major Herbert Blondie Hasler and his team of 12 men undertook rigorous training and developed innovative strategies for their covert attack using 6 canoes. The episode highlighted the strategic importance of Bordeaux harbour and detailed the preparation that set the stage for their mission. In Episode 2, we shifted our focus to the assault phase. The commandos launched their canoes from the submarine HMS Tuna, paddling through treacherous waters to reach Bordeaux harbour. We recounted their tense navigation through enemy defences, the strategic deployment of limpet mines on German cargo ships, and the significant disruption they caused to the Axis supply chain. Despite facing immense challenges, their courage and precision were evident throughout the mission. In this episode, we turn our focus to the aftermath of the raid, the perilous escape phase. Having completed their mission, the commandos now faced the daunting task of evading capture and making their way back to safety. This phase of Operation Frankton was fraught with danger and uncertainty, as the men had to navigate hostile territory, avoid enemy patrols, and overcome numerous obstacles to reach Allied lines. We will also cover the fate of the teams that were lost during the assault phase. Despite their incredible courage and meticulous planning, not all of the commandos were able to escape the clutches of the enemy. Their stories are a poignant reminder of the high stakes and sacrifices involved in such daring operations. Join us as we delve into the gripping details of the escape phase of Operation Frankton, exploring the strategies employed by the commandos, the challenges they encountered, and the ultimate outcomes of their harrowing journey. This episode honors the resilience and bravery of those who undertook one of the most audacious missions of World War II and provides a comprehensive look at the final chapter of their incredible story. During the early hours of December 12, 1942, the cruise of canoes. Catfish and crayfish quickly reunite and resume their familiar roles for their final journey back into the Gironde. They navigate swiftly through the narrow passages between the Ile de Cazaux and the mainland, propelling the canoes with urgency to maximize their distance from Bordeaux before any potential uproar ensues. The tide, ever a crucial factor, dictates their pace. Once it turns, they risk being swept back upstream unless they find a landing spot. Major Hasler, the commander of the operation, aware of the changing tides, veers towards the eastern bank, bypassing the dormant town of Blaye. They silently pass the anchored French liner de Grasse, which Hasler knows from intelligence is out of commission for the war. He silently wishes the ship luck for future voyages to New York. Around 6 o'clock, with dawn and the reversing tide looming, the raiders have advanced enough to consider landing. North of Blaye, in open country, seems a viable spot, with a feasible escape route northeastward. For 5 nights, the 2 canoes have maneuvered through enemy waters, covering over 165 kilometers. As they prepare to part ways, Major Hasler signals to raft up one last time. Addressing Corporal Lever, he directs, "Well, Corporal, this is where we have to separate. You're about a mile north of Blaye. Head straight ashore here and follow your escape instructions. I'll land a bit further north." Corporal Lever, only 22 and lacking extensive training, faces the daunting prospect of navigating foreign territory alone. Despite the challenge, he responds with composure, "Very good, sir. Best of luck to you." The separation is perhaps more poignant than their split for the night's attack. Major Hasler, moved by the moment, thanks his comrades for their courage and resilience, expressing hope for a reunion back home. Sparks, always spirited, lightens the mood by promising a future pub meet-up, saying, "See you in the Granada. We'll keep a couple of pints for you." With a mix of laughter and solemnity, they part ways, Major Hasler last glimpsing Corporal Lever and Marine Mills as they paddle determinedly toward shore, their canoe appearing both small and vulnerable against the vast waterway. This would be the last time Major Hasler sees the brave duo. As he turns away, his heart heavy with the weight of farewell, he focuses on his immediate task, landing safely. From 7 o'clock on, the limpet mines set by Major Hasler and Corporal Lever activate sporadically throughout the day due to their imperfect timing mechanisms and sympathetic fuses. This leads to a prolonged and erratic sequence of blasts which catch repair crews off guard. Fresh explosions occur while damage control is underway, particularly at Bassin South, where Corporal Lever targeted the ex-French ship Alabama. Enemy documents post-war indicate that explosions stretched from early morning until the afternoon, with the last of Corporal Lavett's limpet mines going off around 13 o'clock. None of the explosives from Hasler's Catfish detonate prior to 8:30, but when they do, they all go off within a short 30-minute window. The aftermath is chaotic. French fire and salvage squads called to the scene reportedly exacerbate the situation by using excessive water to douse the fires, inadvertently increasing the damage. After detaching from Crayfish, Major Hasler and Marine Sparks continue paddling vigorously against the emerging flood tide for a short distance before aiming for the shore. They approach near Saint-Genès-de-Blaye, disembarking onto soft mud, which leads up to a familiar terrain of a 6-foot mud cliff topped with tall reeds. They unload their escape equipment and proceed to scuttle their canoe, Catfish, by cutting up its buoyancy bags and slashing its canvas sides. Despite their attempts, the canoe remains semi-submerged due to the swift tide. Major Hasler, feeling a pang of regret, pushes the canoe into the river, marking an unceremonious farewell to their reliable vessel. They then ascend the mud cliff, which proves challenging, and navigate through a noisy reed forest. Emerging into what appears to be a vineyard, they realize their path is complicated by the vine wires, forcing them to adjust their route frequently. Using a compass, they maintain a general northeast direction, managing only about 2.5 kilometers by dawn due to their cautious navigation around potential hazards like farmhouses. As daylight breaks, they find refuge in a secluded wood, relieved to no longer manage the cumbersome canoes and the complexities of river navigation. Here, they enjoy the freedom and simplicity of being on foot, feeling liberated from their recent constraints. Settling by a stream, they wash up and take turns resting, fully embracing the tranquility of their surroundings. Sparks and Hasler reflect on their journey and the impending detonation of their limpet mines, which they won't be able to hear due to their distance from the target. They spend the day recuperating, preparing for further travel inland to ensure a safe distance from the river and potential capture zones, planning to continue their escape under the cover of night in their uniforms. Continuing on through the night of December 13th, 1942, Hasler and Sparks navigate by using only fields, footpaths, and cart tracks, avoiding roads to stay clear of potential detection by car headlights. The vineyard wires frequently hinder their progress, making their travel exceedingly slow. By dawn, they manage only 13 kilometers and find themselves 1.5 kilometers south of Reignac. Deciding it's time to approach a farmhouse for assistance, they select one as the sun rises and approach it. They meet a farmer who appears indifferent and directs them to his wife for any requests. Hasler, with limited French, pleads their case for old clothes to disguise themselves. The farmer's wife initially reacts with suspicion and indignation, but eventually provides them with a beret and a cap, albeit begrudgingly. She urges them to leave quickly and not mention their visit to anyone, indicating the fear and risk involved in helping them. Leaving the first farmhouse with minimal gains, Hasler and Sparks feel the inadequacy of their disguises and the looming risk of being reported. They continue to another farm, only to be turned away by a stern woman who refuses to assist them. Persisting, they approach a third farmhouse. After a suspenseful wait, the kind-hearted madame of this house provides them with trousers, a jacket, and even a sack to carry their belongings. This encounter lifts their spirits significantly, and they finally begin to acquire the necessary attire to blend in as civilians. After disguising themselves as civilians, Hasler and Sparks discard their military gear and bury their uniforms, pistols, and fighting knives. Dressed in the shabby clothes they have acquired, they transform themselves into the semblance of French peasants. Despite the discomfort of the old, worn-out trousers and jackets, they maintain some warmth thanks to their naval service underwear and additional cold-weather gear stowed in their sacks. Hasler adjusts his distinctive moustache to a more common French walrus style to blend in better, adding to their disguise. Satisfied with their appearance, they laugh, feeling they look like poor but respectable locals, despite their fatigue from a night of marching and a morning spent securing their new outfits. Choosing to continue their journey without rest, they head towards Brignac, the first French village they dare to enter. Sparks finds the village notably different from English ones, with its utilitarian approach to space and picturesque yet brittle appearance. The village's layout, with cultivated lands reaching up to the doors instead of quaint gardens, and the surrounding vineyards and olive groves, offers them a new and interesting environment. In Brignac, their luck holds as they manage to acquire another sack for easier carrying of their supplies and a jacket large enough for Hasler. As evening falls, they opt against seeking shelter, not wishing to push their luck by asking for more help than they have already received. They retreat to the woods south of Donnezac, setting up a makeshift camp with bracken mattresses, wearing all their clothes and covering themselves with the sacks for additional warmth. In the early and biting cold of December 14th, 1942, Major Hasler and Marine Sparks rise at 6:30, an hour before daylight, and start their day with a brisk walk to generate warmth. They now confidently traverse roads and pass through villages without hesitation, blending into the local populace with their typical rural attire, thus diminishing the risk of attracting attention. They rely on specialized maps, far superior to the standard silk escape maps issued to servicemen. These guides help them navigate the intricate network of French country roads, steering clear of main highways heavily trafficked by German forces and avoiding large towns where the presence of strangers might arouse suspicion. Their morning trek takes them through Donnezac in the early darkness, with the first lights of farmhouses dotting the landscape, heralding the start of another day. As daylight breaks, they navigate the confusing layout of Ruffignac, a larger village where the numerous turnings and absence of signposts significantly challenge their orientation. The difficulty of navigating unfamiliar towns without openly consulting a map or compass adds layers to the complexity of their escape. In Rouffignac, after several missteps and corrections, they continue northward along a lesser road identified as Chemin d'Intérêt Commun No. 53. Throughout the day, Major Hasler hones a methodical approach to traversing towns. Before entering, they memorize exits and landmarks by studying the map. While on the streets, they project familiarity and confidence, never betraying any hint of their foreignness or uncertainty. At critical junctions without clear signage, Hasler discreetly consults their compass under the pretense of lighting a cigarette. This act, blending nonchalance with precision, allows them to check their bearings without revealing their navigational tools to any onlookers. By the day's end, they have covered nearly 30 kilometers, avoiding any interactions to maintain their anonymity, which deepens their isolation. As night falls, they seek refuge in a wooded area near Saint-Germain-de-Vibrac, preparing for another night outdoors. The conditions are harsh. Their limited clothing offers little protection against the cold, and intermittent rain makes it impossible to stay dry. Exhausted, hungry, and morale at its lowest, they endure a miserable night, unaware of the capture of their fellow commandos, Lever and Mills, adding a somber note to their already challenging situation. That very same day, Corporal Albert Lever and Marine William Mills are captured by the French gendarmerie at Montlieu-la-Garde and handed over to the Germans. That same day, Moffat's body is found on the Isle de Ré. However unsure, Sherd's body is believed to have been recovered and buried elsewhere along the coast of the same coast. Shivering and miserable during the day of December 15, 1942, they eat the last remnants of their compact rations at a cold dawn breakfast in the dripping woods. Despite their distaste, they chew the last cardboard-like biscuits and the last iron-hard oatmeal cake, discarding the empty cartons afterward. Today, they must beg for food, a daunting task as food is rationed, and each interaction with civilians introduces a new danger. They also need to seek shelter, their strength ebbing after 8 days without proper rest. Their clothes, alternately soaked from rain and sweat, are filthy and uncomfortable. Their spirits are at their lowest, reduced now to mere vagrants, shelterless and foodless. Gathering their strength, they stumble through the dark, sodden woods and resume their journey on the road with stiff limbs and wet clothes chafing their skin. Hunger begins to gnaw at them relentlessly. They pass through Saint-Cyr-Champagne and, after 4 miles, detour to avoid Barbezieux, which is too large and too patrolled for 2 vagrants in search of sustenance. The exercise starts to warm them up, but they remain as wet as before, the rain unceasing. Their hunger intensifies, but they decide to delay begging for food until the afternoon, hoping for leftovers from midday meals. Weary, they continue through Barrett, following winding secondary roads, their pace slowing, the sacks heavy on their backs. In the early afternoon, they begin to look for benevolent individuals, trying to gauge the nature of a man or woman from a brief glance. In a small village a mile south of Touzac, they spot a plump man outside a garage with an attached house. Plump men are often good-natured, they surmise. "He looks like his old woman feeds him well," Sparks comments. Hasler approaches and politely asks for food in French, but the man's dismissive response directs them to his wife. They find Madame at the back door. Thin and sour-faced, she snaps with indignation. "Certainly not. We have nothing to give you. We have not enough for ourselves. Clear out." Disheartened, they trudge through Touzac without making further attempts, wary of the thin woman potentially alerting the police. Beyond the village, they spot a house with a chicken run at the back and a woman feeding chickens. She appears plump, maternal, and kind, a good omen. Approaching tentatively, they introduce themselves. Observing their dejected, sodden state, the woman shows compassion. She questions their nationality and, upon confirmation, returns with half a loaf and a leg of chicken. They savor each bite, the stale bread tasting like a delicacy compared to their recent fare. Continuing their journey, they experience fluctuating fortunes. At one stop, they meet a family that initially seems hostile. The father, a fierce-looking woodman, interrogates their identity and motives exhaustively before their genuine Englishness, demonstrated by Sparks and their escape gear, softens his demeanor. Suddenly, the woodman becomes hospitable, interested in their story and eager to help. They are fed and offered a good night of sleep. After a restful night and dressed in clean clothes provided by their host, Major Hasler and Marine Sparks are transported in a baker's van to an undisclosed location on December 19, 1942. Their fate now fully in the hands of the French resistance. In a secluded spot, they meet a new guide, resembling a farm worker who leads them through a dense, wooded path. The silence is broken only by the rustle of leaves and distant animal calls. The guide's cautious pace and frequent stops to scan the surroundings heighten their sense of alertness. Their journey meanders through dense underbrush and narrow fields, the darkness concealing much around them. The guide's familiarity with the terrain ensures they avoid paths that might be monitored by German forces. The distant barking of a dog sporadically spikes their anxiety, a reminder of the ever-present danger of discovery. As they approach their destination, the guide signals a halt, listening intently for other contacts. After a quiet exchange of whispers, "Come with me," they are handed over to a younger guide who leads them deeper into the safety of the French resistance network. Arriving at an isolated farmhouse, they see faint light through shuttered windows and hear farm animals, confirming life inside. The guide instructs Hasler and Sparks to wait while he checks the surroundings. Soon, a farmer meets the guide, exchanges a few words, and beckons them inside. Once in the farmhouse, their host, Monsieur Armand, a tall, slim man in his early 30s with an intelligent demeanor, welcomes them warmly. His wife, efficient and quiet, along with their children who speak no English, complete the household. Monsieur Armand asks no questions, signaling a new phase in their journey. They are accepted without further verification, reflecting a deeper level of trust within the resistance network. This acceptance marks a significant shift, bringing an end to the constant scrutiny and suspicion they have endured. Hasler and Sparks are shown to a room prepared for their stay, signaling the beginning of a 3-week period of hiding. The room, with its dated yet meticulously maintained furnishings, provides a stark contrast to their recent hardships. Strict rules govern their stay. They are confined to their room, stepping out only for essential trips, ensuring no strangers see them. Their days are marked by simplicity, hot water for washing, hearty meals, and the occasional wine, a stark departure from the trials of their journey. Despite the monotony, they struggle with the confinement. Sparks finds it particularly challenging due to his extroverted nature, while Hasler engages in woodcarving, providing small gifts for the children and occupying his mind. As the days turn into weeks, their situation feels stagnant until news arrives of an imminent departure, facilitated by Marie Claire's son, promising movement towards freedom. The cultural and personal differences between Hasler and Sparks become evident, each coping with the situation in their own way. Hasler finding solace in solitude and local cuisine, while Sparks longs for the comforts of English food. Their departure is set for January 6, 1943, a mix of relief and anticipation. They are instructed to send a coded message through the BBC upon safely reaching England, and Monsieur Armand's refusal to accept payment underscores the depth of their reliance on the resistance network. On the morning of January 6, 1943, Major Hasler and Marine Sparks, somewhat out of condition but hopeful, prepare to leave. Marcel, a slender, friendly 19-year-old who speaks English with a slight accent, arrives to transport them to Lyon, where his mother, Marie-Claire, awaits. Marcel explains the delay in their plans due to his mother's bus accident and the compromise of usual escape routes, necessitating a new, uncertain path to Spain. They face a 200-mile detour eastward, further from the Spanish border than anticipated. The journey to Lyon involves cycling to Roumazières to catch a night train, with Marcel outlining the plan to discreetly enter the train station to avoid identity checks. The crowded train ride through the night is tense and uncomfortable. Upon arrival in Lyon, they navigate the busy station and city to reach Marie-Claire's flat, where they meet the formidable, medal-decorated Marie-Claire. Despite her injuries, she energetically organizes their care and explains the delays and complications with the escape route. Marie-Claire informs them of their temporary stay in a large house in Lyon's northern suburbs, emphasizing the need to avoid romantic entanglements that could jeopardize their safety, a rule based on previous experiences. Hasler takes the opportunity to send a detailed encoded message through Switzerland to the Combined Operations Headquarters, summarizing their operations and experiences. Despite the temporary safety, their stay in Lyon is marked by frequent relocations to various safe houses designed to evade German patrols. This period of evasion underscores the precariousness of their situation as they await a new escape route through the Pyrenees. Marie-Claire's return from Switzerland brings mixed news. While she has successfully relayed their message, her efforts to establish a new escape route have stalled. As a result, she transfers their care to a larger organization, leaving Hasler and Sparks feeling frustrated and helpless as they continue to wait for a chance to return to England. In early February, a change in the escape plan occurs when a distinctly English-looking man, with whom Marie-Claire evidently has methodological disagreements, arrives to transport Hasler and Sparks to their next location. They are introduced to Monsieur F., a jovial Parisian who speaks a bit of English. He announces that he will take them to Marseille for the next leg of their journey. That evening, they board an overnight train to Marseille. In a mischievous act, Monsieur F. seats Hasler next to two German soldiers, occasionally speaking English loudly enough to cause discomfort, though the soldiers seem oblivious. Arriving in Marseille at sunrise, they openly navigate the streets to a modern apartment block. Here, they are welcomed by Madame M., a typical Marseillaise, petite, slim, and spirited. The flat is a hub for British servicemen escaping through France, including 2 RAF men who evaded capture after bailing out. It is bustling with activity, offering makeshift sleeping arrangements for the constant flow of escapees. Madame M. maintains strict discipline to avoid attracting unwanted attention, especially from untrustworthy neighbors. Her husband, Monsieur M., proudly identifies as a communist, viewing the refugees as ideological allies due to their association with the Soviet Union. The organization overseeing their stay, led by the enigmatic Pat, periodically checks on them, adding intrigue to their temporary shelter. Social interactions with other RAF personnel offer some relief from the monotony, although this also increases security risks due to the concentration of escapees. Madame M. excels at managing the flat, sourcing food from black market channels and preparing rich Mediterranean meals, which Sparks finds unappealing. Delays in their planned escape through Spain are frustrating, but efforts to reopen the route continue. Hasler, accustomed to active duty, struggles with the enforced inactivity and longs for the autonomy of managing their escape. New arrivals, including Flying Officer Prince Werner de Merode and a French woman intending to join the Free French Forces, introduce new dynamics to the group. Sparks's interactions with the French woman, teaching her colorful English phrases, bring some light-hearted moments. Their anticipated escape remains on hold as they await confirmation of a safe passage through the Pyrenees. The extended stay tests their patience and morale as they prepare for the physically demanding journey ahead, including being issued espadrilles for the mountain trek. On March 1, 1943, Hasler, Sparks, and their group set off by train along the picturesque Mediterranean coast. The beauty of the spring landscape contrasts starkly with the war beyond. Thoughts of Malta and the desert conflicts fuel Hasler's desire to rejoin the war effort. They reach Perpignan, where the sleepy atmosphere of this historic city belies the urgency of their mission. Hustled into a van amid crates, they continue their journey with a new addition, a gaunt French intellectual carrying a load of books. As they ascend into the colder, barren landscapes of the Pyrenees, the physical challenge intensifies. Led by rugged Basque mountaineers, they navigate through rocky terrain, deliberately avoiding well-patrolled paths to escape German and Spanish border guards. The physical inactivity of previous months takes its toll on Hasler and Sparks, who struggle with dehydration and exhaustion on the grueling mountain paths. An attempt to drink wine for hydration is thwarted by their intellectual companion, prioritizing alertness. Reaching a small stream, they hydrate and gain some strength, but soon face the snowline's harsh conditions. Melting snow in their mouths becomes necessary for survival as they push further into the mountainous terrain. Navigational challenges arise with cloud cover, forcing reliance on the French intellectual's knowledge of the terrain. They descend from the higher altitudes with difficulty, spending a cold night in a cave before continuing their descent towards Spain. Their entry into Spain is marked by signs of human activity and cultivation. Exhausted and out of food, they locate a farmhouse by mimicking a dog's bark, where they find shelter and replenish their strength with local food and wine. After a restful night at the farmhouse, they proceed to Banolas, where they are expected and can rest more securely, though still hidden from authorities. This marks the end of their arduous physical journey across the Pyrenees, transitioning from the intense hardships of the escape to a cautious wait for the next phase of their mission. Their journey to Barcelona represents the final leg of their European escape. Hidden in a small hotel, they avoid attracting local authority attention while planning their move. A lorry disguised as a mundane delivery vehicle is prepared to transport them to the city under the guise of transporting WC China. The refugees conceal themselves among the straw in the lorry's back, joking as they settle into their rustic hideout. At a police checkpoint, their disguise holds, and they pass without incident, moving closer to Barcelona and the relative safety of the British consulate. The men arrive at the British consulate in Barcelona during the second half of March 1943. Major Hasler and Sparks face skepticism from a cynical young Englishman who doubts their identities. Despite his reservations, he provides them with new clothes of Spanish manufacture, simple but clean, which they gratefully accept, discarding their worn and somewhat offensive old garments. The consulate is overwhelmed with individuals claiming sanctuary, predominantly Frenchmen posing as French Canadians to avoid likely deportation back to France by the French consulate. Among the refugees are British servicemen. Those verified as genuine are sent either to Britain or to free French territories in North Africa, depending on their circumstances. During their brief stay, Hasler is particularly touched by the stories of genuine service escapers. One notable tale involves a British private who reaches Lisbon still in uniform, lamenting only the loss of his rifle, highlighting the surreal experiences many have endured. Hasler meets several Royal Air Force escapees in Barcelona who have suffered harsh treatment from the Spanish authorities, including imprisonment under dreadful conditions. This has led to a deep-seated resentment towards Spain among them. Luckily, Hasler, appearing older due to his baldness, is classified by the vice-consul as a commercial traveller rather than a military escapee, affording him more freedom in Barcelona. This contrasts starkly with the treatment of Sparks and other younger escapees who must remain hidden. The unsettling revelation that the gaunt French intellectual who had guided them across the Pyrenees might have been a Gestapo agent casts a dark shadow over their relief at having reached Barcelona. His disappearance post-arrival without seeking refuge fuels suspicions of his betrayal, which could potentially endanger their resistance contacts back in France. With orders for Hasler to return home with utmost priority, he enjoys the hospitality of the naval attaché in Madrid while awaiting transportation. The social scene provides a brief respite from the strains of his journey, including visits to the Prado to admire the masterpieces of Velázquez and El Greco. Finally, Major Hasler is driven to Gibraltar, marking the end of his long and perilous journey back to British territory. The relief of stepping onto British soil is immense, though marred by the presence of German officials during his stop in Seville, a stark reminder of the ongoing war. Major Hasler arrives back in Britain on April 1, 1943 by aircraft. In recognition of Hasler's bravery and leadership comes with the award of the Distinguished Service Order, DSO, and a brevet majority. Marine Sparks arrives in Great Britain by boat a few weeks later. He receives the Distinguished Service Medal. Corporal Laver and Marine Mills are honoured posthumously with mentions in dispatches, a sombre reminder of the costs associated with their daring escape. In the aftermath of the attack, the report substantial damage. The freighter Dresden's stern is severely compromised, impacting the outer plating and propeller shaft tunnel, causing it to sink. The Spurbrecher Tannenfels lists dramatically, flooding quickly and nearly capsizing. The cargo vessel Alabama sustains extensive damage from all 5 of Laver's limpets, and the Portland also suffers significant harm. Both fire and structural damage are widespread across the affected vessels. The Alabama, Tannenfels, and Portland are eventually repaired underwater, refloated, and moved to dry dock for comprehensive restoration. The fate of the Spurbrecher and the tanker remains uncertain, although it is noted that a limpet intended for the Spurbrecher may have dislodged and detonated on the riverbed. By May 3, 1943, British naval intelligence compiles detailed reports on the raid's outcomes, highlighting a considerable impact on German maritime operations in Bordeaux. The Germans, caught off guard, are markedly perturbed by these developments. At Hitler's headquarters, the damage report sparks fury and demands for accountability, indicating deep frustration and confusion about the unexpected and enigmatic nature of the attack, initially thought to involve drifting mines. The operation's audacity becomes apparent when the remnants of the canoes, catfish and crayfish are found near Blaye on December 12, 1942, along with an unexploded limpet on the hull of the ship Portland. Additionally, the wreckage of Chard's canoe, Conga, is later discovered near La Palisse, close to where Moffat's body was recovered. Mackinnon's cuttlefish, however, is never found. These discoveries prompt immediate and stringent security measures from Captain Max Gebauer, the senior naval officer of the Inshore Squadron of Gascony, aimed at thwarting any future similar attacks. The area where the submarine tuna had been detected by radar is subjected to continuous illumination by searchlights, and other regions are thoroughly swept. Coastal batteries are put on alert, and searchlight batteries at Royan, Saint-Georges, and Le Verdon are instructed to conduct regular searches. Additionally, 2 vessels are tasked with patrolling the estuary mouth between Pte de Grave and Royan, with increased land patrols on both riverbanks. The harbour master of Bordeaux also issues multiple directives to bolster port security, including installing defensive booms at the Pauillac floating dock and the stone bridge of Bordeaux. These measures, supplemented by enhanced patrols, the installation of barbed wire defences around key installations, increased lighting on ships and within harbour areas, an augmentation of the guard vessel crew at the harbour entrance, and regular searchlight sweeps of the shoreline, reflect the profound alarm and concern these attacks triggered among the German and Vichy French authorities. It remains unclear whether all these defensive measures were fully implemented due to potential shortages of manpower and materials. The exact fate of Canoe Conga with Corporal Sherd and his Nombre 2, Marine Moffat, remains uncertain. However, in April 1943, the mother of Marine Moffat, in Halifax, receives a letter from the Plymouth Division Royal Marines stating, "From the information received from a German casualty list, the body of your son, Marine David Moffat, Ply. X108881 was washed ashore on the 17th of December 1942. There is evidence suggesting Corporal Sherd also washed ashore later, though his body was not definitively identified. Sergeant Samuel Wallace and Marine Robert Hewitt, in Canoe Coalfish, after separating from their companions during the initial tide race, continue determinedly through much of the night. However, at around 4 o'clock on December 8, 1943, they face severe buffeting that capsizes their canoe near the Pointe de Grave lighthouse. They manage to swim ashore, but are immediately taken into custody in a state of collapse by a Luftwaffe flak battery. Later that day, various pieces of their equipment, including limpets and maps, are found scattered along the foreshore. Their wrecked canoe is later discovered below the low water mark off Pointe de Grave, but cannot be salvaged. The Luftwaffe hands the prisoners over to naval custody under the command of Captain Max Gebauer, the senior naval officer in Shore Squadron, Gascony. The previous evening, while dining at Royan with Admiral Bachmann, the commander-in-chief of Western France, Gebauer had activated searchlights following a report that the submarine tuna had been detected by radar. Upon receiving news of Wallace and Hewitt's capture early on December 8, 1943, Gebauer immediately orders a search for any other British operatives and informs his admiral. Admiral Bachmann subsequently orders that the prisoners be executed under the Commando Befehl on the night of December 11, 1942, in a sandpit in a forest north of Bordeaux. After Lieutenant McKinnon and Marine Conway and Canoe Cuttlefish separate from their team at Le Verdon for reasons yet to be clarified, they continue their mission independently. Tragically, on December 10, 1942, near the Ile de Cazaux, their canoe collides with a submerged object near the Baie d'Armes, a crucial point where the Garonne and Dordogne rivers converge. This collision results in their canoe sinking, compelling them to swim back to the island in a desperate attempt to find safety. Days before Christmas, their circumstances change when they meet Monsieur Louis Joubert, a resident of Cessac, a village about 32 kilometers east-southeast of Bordeaux. Observing 2 strangers with his neighbor, Monsieur Chéreau, Joubert discovers they are Englishmen escaping from Bordeaux. Sympathetic to their plight, due to his son's wartime experiences, Joubert welcomes them into his home, providing food and shelter. During their stay, McKinnon, suffering from a painful boil on his knee, receives medical attention from Madame Joubert. Despite his condition, the urgency of their situation compels them to continue their escape. They attempt to connect with an escape network in Frontenac, but are unsuccessful. Returning to Cessac, they prepare for the next stage of their journey. Determined to reach Bilbao in northeastern Spain, Lieutenant Mackinnon and Marine Conway plan their travel to Toulouse, hoping to eventually cross into Spain. They receive assistance from a local Frenchman who offers to help them cross the demarcation line. After heartfelt farewells with their generous hosts, they reach La Réole safely. However, their freedom is short-lived. Taken to a civilian hospital in La Réole, their location is compromised, leading to their capture by a German squad from Langon. The mayor of La Réole later informs Madame Joubert that both men are betrayed and subsequently captured by the Germans. After landing just north of Blaye in the early hours of December 12, 1943, Corporal Lever and Marine Mills in Canoe Crayfish initially make significant progress, covering about 35 kilometers through challenging terrain over 2 days. However, their efforts to obtain civilian clothing are unsuccessful, leaving them still in uniform and more vulnerable to detection. Their capture occurs in La Garde, a suburb of Montlieu, approximately 20 kilometers southeast of the hamlet of Villers-Xavier. On the day of their capture, Lever and Mills are still in uniform, making them easily identifiable as foreign military personnel by the local authorities. Following their apprehension by the French police, they are transferred to the Germans in accordance with the directives of the Vichy government, which collaborated with Nazi Germany during the war. The Vichy regime has agreements in place to hand over captured Allied servicemen to German control. Consequently, Corporal Lever and Marine Mills are handed over to the German security police and taken to the municipal police prison in Bordeaux. The Germans issue the following report on Operation Frankton: sabotage attacks on German ships off Bordeaux. On December 12, 1942, a number of valuable German ships were badly damaged off Bordeaux by explosions below the waterline. Adhesive mines were attached by 5 British sabotage squads working from canoes. Of the 10 who took part in the attack, the following were captured a few days later: Mackinnon, naval lieutenant, born the 15th of July, 1921, North Argyllshire. Lever, Albert Friedrich, petty officer, born the 29th of September, 1920, Birkenhead. Mills, William Henry, Marine, born the 15th of December, 1921, Kettering. Wallace, Samuel, Sergeant, born the 24th of September, 1913, Dublin, Eire. Conway, James, Marine, born the 28th of August, 1922, Stockport. Hewitt, Robert, Marine, b. April 12, 21, Glasgow. A 7th soldier, Moffat, was found drowned. The rest, among them their leader, Major Hasler, Marine Sparks, and Corporal Sheard, presumably escaped to Spain. The men concerned paddled in their canoes by twos from a submarine up the mouth of the Gironde. They were wearing special olive-grey garments without any military badges. Having carried out the explosions, they sank their craft and tried to make their escape to France with the help of the French civilian population. They met in 2 places on the Gironde in a bar and were brought to the demarcation line by intermediaries with whom arrangements had been made beforehand. Noteworthy punishable offences committed on their flight have not been discovered up till now. All those captured were shot in accordance with orders on the 23rd of March, 1943. The report clearly shows how the Germans tried to justify the executions by making the operation as illegal as possible. About the executions, there is little we know. There are some indications that the execution of Lieutenant Mackinnon, Corporal Lever, Marine Conway, and Marine Mills took place in the same place as where Wallace and Hewitt were executed. However, it is widely believed that the execution took place on March 23, 1943, following a final inquisition in Paris. This conclusion is based on the alignment of various fragmented records and reports from the period. The method and exact circumstances of their execution are, like many such instances during the war, kept deliberately opaque by German military command, part of a broader strategy to obfuscate their treatment of prisoners of war, especially those involved in special operations or espionage. Adding to the ambiguity, the German authorities issued burial certificates stating that McKinnon, Conway, Lever, and Mills are buried at Bagneux Cemetery in Paris. However, subsequent investigations and searches have failed to find any physical evidence or written records confirming this claim. The absence of verifiable burial sites raises profound questions about the authenticity of the German records and suggests a possible cover-up intended to obscure the true nature of their deaths. The issuance of burial certificates claims that the Operation Frankton raiders were found drowned in Bordeaux harbour by the Germans. This claim is likely an attempt by German authorities to mask the true nature of the deaths of these British commandos and to alleviate the potential backlash or questions that might arise from the international community or humanitarian groups regarding their treatment of prisoners of war. Just before Christmas 1942, Marines William Ellery, Eric Fisher, and Reserve Norman Colley return with the HMS Tuna to Great Britain. Later on, Marines Eric Fisher, Norman Colley, and Bill Sparks join Bill Pritchard Gordon's No. 2 section which, in 1943, they are sent to the Mediterranean with the Earthworm Detachment. Fisher is later selected to participate in Operation Sunbeam, the attack on German destroyers in the harbour of Leros. As we conclude our series on Operation Frankton in the Special Forces in World War II podcast, we reflect on the extraordinary courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice exhibited by the Royal Marine Boom Patrol Detachment. Throughout this series, we have journeyed through the meticulous planning, daring assault, and harrowing escape phases of one of the most audacious missions of World War II. Operation Frankton began with Major Herbert Blondie Hasler's innovative vision and detailed preparation. In Episode 1, we explored how Hasler and his team of 12 men trained rigorously and developed strategies to launch a covert attack on Bordeaux harbour using 6 canoes. The operation aimed to disrupt the German supply chain by targeting enemy ships in this crucial port. In Episode 2, we covered the assault phase, detailing the perilous journey from the submarine HMS Tuna to Bordeaux harbour. The commandos navigated through enemy defences and successfully planted limpet mines on German cargo ships, causing significant damage and disruption. Their bravery and precision during this phase were remarkable. In Episode 3, we turned our focus to the escape phase, where the commandos faced the daunting task of evading capture and returning to safety. This phase highlighted the immense challenges and dangers they encountered as they navigated hostile territory. Unfortunately, not all of the men were able to make it back. Only Major Herbert Hasler and Corporal William Sparks managed to return to Great Britain. The rest of the team were captured by the Germans and subsequently executed, a stark reminder of the high stakes and grave risks involved in such operations. In summary, Operation Frankton stands as a testament to the extraordinary valor and determination of the Royal Marine Boom Patrol Detachment. Their mission, from meticulous planning to daring execution and a perilous escape, showcases the resilience and bravery required in special operations. The significant impact they had on the Axis supply chain demonstrated the effectiveness of their efforts and their contribution to the Allied war effort. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Operation Frankton. We hope this series has provided a deeper understanding of the complexities and heroism involved in this historic raid. Stay tuned for more episodes as we continue to explore the remarkable stories of Special Forces operations during World War II on the Special Forces in World War II podcast. And that concludes this mission briefing, fellow warriors of knowledge. We've navigated through the trenches of information, delving deep into the battlefields of history. As we wrap up this episode in our campaign for understanding, remember that knowledge is your most potent weapon. Stay vigilant and keep sharpening your intellectual arsenal. We'll rendezvous again for another episode, continuing our relentless pursuit of enlightenment. Until then, keep your mind sharp, your curiosity burning, and your determination unwavering. Simultaneously, you are hereby alerted to our outposts on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, fortifying our information dissemination. Should you possess any pertinent intelligence to bolster our mission, transmit your findings with no hesitation. Your contributions shall be prominently acknowledged within the operational archives. Furthermore, for those prepared to provide substantial reinforcement, navigate to our Patreon forward base and enlist. Your support is integral to sustaining our forward thrust. Carry forth the legacy. Dismissed.